And we're live.
What's up, Alec? How you doing
What
today?
is up, Jake? Thank the good Lord. I had a voice instructor when I was taking some voice lessons, and every time I asked him how he was doing, he would say, "Thank the good Lord." So this one is from Alec. That was his name. So thank the good Lord. Another day after Pesach, back to the routine, back to the gym, back to the normal diet, back to work. But I realize our friends in America, the ones that are observant, are still keeping another day. For me, it's just like the one day versus 2 days. It feels so much better for me keeping one day. Not saying anything negative about Chag or anything like that, God forbid, but it just feels right. I don't know.
Yeah, man. How many Pesachs have you celebrated in Israel over the course of your lifetime?
Honestly, a lot, because my grandparents live here, so we used to do a lot of the Sadarim here. And when my family came here growing up, we would only do one Seder when we were in Israel. So I would say probably I made Aliyah a year and a half ago. This is now my second Pesach here in Israel. So at least two, and I would say we probably came here around 6 or 7 times. So, probably sitting just under 10. How about yourself?
So this was my first,
Oh,
and so that
amazing. Wow.
yeah, it was amazing. First Pesach in Israel, first time doing one Seder, and it was great. It was awesome. I mean, I do. There is something amazing about having more Yom Tovim, and it's stretched out and celebrating with family. This year was different. We put a lot of effort into kind of doing it ourselves
Yeah.
and doing one Seder, so that was a little bit different for us, but it was amazing, and the kids had a great time, and that was really my focus, me and my wife's focus, and I think we delivered on that. So very happy about it.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and I think, last thing about Pesach from my end, I think there's always something special when you're sitting in Israel and you conclude the Seder with Lashana Haba B'Yerushalayim. I think it has a certain feeling of like, you're already almost there, right? We're not completely there because the Yerushalayim we're talking about at the end of the Seder is probably a little different than the Yerushalayim I feel blessed to be living in, but I think we're well on our way, and I think you feel a little bit more when you're living here. So it's always nice to conclude the Seder on that note in Israel, in Yerushalayim.
Absolutely, I would echo that. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're talking about Pesach. We're talking about other stuff. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I put out a LinkedIn post earlier this week that got a little bit of traction. And honestly, I put out this LinkedIn post. I was just like on my way back from a Pesach Tiyul. My wife and I went to Ein Gedi, which is like beautiful, right by the Dead Sea. And on the way back, I wasn't driving, and I was just like, like this seems like a pretty cool idea of a post, and like put something out. And the premise of the post was basically there's so much hype around AI, and especially around ChatGPT, and it could get very easy to get lost in like very complicated prompts and very complicated use cases. But there are a variety of things that I'm using AI for every single day practically that I'm able to get a lot of benefit from in my life. Like my wife made a comment that like a lot of times I'm just chatting with ChatGPT, but a lot of the things that I'm doing, it's giving me real value. And I think what could be really cool to talk about is all of the different ways and strategies that a new an Ole Chadash, or someone who is living in Israel now or thinking about making Aliyah, wherever you are in that journey, some cool ways that you can actually utilize AI with examples to make your process and your transition more seamless and more enjoyable. And I think we chatted there both numerous ways we're using it, and I think we could have a really fun, practical episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a ton of hype around AI. Obviously, a lot of people are using the buzzword to raise money or add some type of AI component to their existing stack. It's funny, I was using an app recently called Zero,
Uh-huh.
which is like an intermittent fasting app,
Yeah,
and I
I've
was like
used it before.
looking, yeah, okay, that's
Yeah,
another
yeah.
discussion I want to have with you because it's great,
I think I
but
had
they
like
have
a
little
250-day streak at one point.
two.
Like
You just say 250?
I think 250. Yeah, a few years
Wow.
ago. I used to be like hardcore intermittent faster.
Amazing. But they now have an AI component, and it's actually great. You can type in little questions about your fast, what you can eat, can't eat, when what would throw off the fast or whatever. And I think we're starting to get used to seeing these little AI components in all these different types of apps we're using. And I think you see in some places it works really well. Some places it feels like they're still kind of trying to figure it out. But there's obviously a lot of hype around AI, and there's obviously a lot of great aspects to it
Yeah.
as well. I think a lot of people don't realize that we've been using AI for more than a decade. It's
Yeah.
just that recently the subset of AI, which is an LLMs, which was a big breakthrough with ChatGPT, and they weirdly nailed the interface, even though it's the most simple interface ever. Although they are adding things and making the experience better.
Uh-huh.
But we're all using AI and LLMs a lot, and so let's try to talk about some of the good aspects. For if you're thinking about making Aliyah or after you've made Aliyah.
I love it. I love it. Cool. I could kind of start us off with one thing, also a little bit of a controversial take, but I think Google Translate for the most part is dead now with ChatGPT. Maybe you use it for like small things in a grocery store, but any translations that I need to get done right now, and I could give a bunch of examples, I just throw that baby into ChatGPT. Especially where it is most useful is for it's not for like independent words like what does this word mean, it's for documents, right? So I know something we were chatting about before is rental agreements, right? Like everyone who comes here probably like will either be renting or buying a place, and people, I don't want to say anything bad about Israelis, but I know people who have had a lot of negative experiences with property agents here and everything, and when it comes to renting property. And I even looked into this. It costs a few thousand shekels or hundreds of dollars to have a lawyer look this over. But I just threw all of those documents, saved it as a PDF, threw it into ChatGPT, said, "You are a real estate expert. Please translate." And like I'm a little bit lazy, so I didn't ask it to translate the whole document, although you for sure could. I asked it to highlight the biggest points for me in English, anything that I could be missing, and to me, like that is one example. And in terms of the Israeli bureaucracy, where there are a lot of other different categories, that is just like was one of the most obvious examples. But I'm sure you could do this with so many other things.
Yeah, for sure. So biggest, best use case is translations, for
Yeah,
sure. Now, we talked about in the other conversation about WhatsApp and how everyone uses that. A
yeah.
lot of people don't know that there's an AI in WhatsApp. It's that little colored
I don't
ring.
have that for some reason. I don't know. I
You,
don't
oh,
know
you don't
why.
have it?
Yeah,
It's super useful because it's trained on Llama 3. Maybe it's
yeah.
3.1, which is Meta's open source model. And you can copy a WhatsApp message and throw that right into a different WhatsApp chat and translate it right there. So I find that that's really useful when you're in a bunch of different chats to translate it right in WhatsApp itself without leaving to go to ChatGPT. So it's again, I'm saving you half a second here, but for sure in terms of throwing in rental agreements and stuff, like rental agreements are pretty standard. They're probably
Yeah,
anywhere between 8 and 12 pages or whatever.
yeah,
So, and I think it cost, when I looked into it, it cost probably $500 to $1,000 to have someone review it.
yeah,
And so I paid $20 for ChatGPT at the time and put it in and then pulled it out to a Google Doc, highlighted the important parts. And it was great. It was, great $20 spent.
love it.
Yeah, so translations. You probably also thrown in utility bills,
Exactly.
different documents that you get. Do you how has it worked for you with uploading a PDF versus like taking a picture of it?
Yeah, I've had issues in the past with uploading a PDF, but when the PDF function is working, and it seems to be a lot better now, maybe with the new 4.0 model on ChatGPT, it's pretty seamless. So I save everything as a PDF, I upload it. To me, that is the most seamless way. How about you? You take pictures mostly, or you use the PDF function?
Yeah, no, I find that I do upload a lot.
Yeah,
So like to give you an example, I uploaded documents that related to getting shipping quotes because we sent a lift over. So I was getting quotes from multiple places and I just uploaded all of them and I was like, compare them for me. Just like if
Yeah.
you were sitting with someone who is a shipping analyst or whatever, that's how you
Yeah.
have to treat it. And you ask it questions like, what should I look out for? How can I
Yeah.
save money? How can I negotiate better? And so I found that it took in the PDFs really nicely and gave me some solid points, and it was really spot on. Like it was so close to what my ultimate cost for the lift was, and I got a great person, so it
That's
definitely
awesome.
works. I find when I'm on the go, I'm using the camera more. When I on my
Yeah,
phone, of
sure.
like, hey, this thing's broken. Let me take a picture of it, or this thing's not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the go, it's the camera.
How I think of ChatGPT, really AI in general, but we'll talk specifically about ChatGPT now. I think of it as my like an expert analyst in whatever field that I'm in, right? So like what do I mean by that? I am ultimately going to make the end decision of whatever I think is best, what post on LinkedIn might be best, what I should do health-wise, what I should, there are a million different examples what quote to go with, right? But I could have it do a lot of the legwork for me in making that decision, right? I could have it analyze things as an expert, just like an analyst would do, right? It's the same with investments, right? Like say you want to be investing your money, you'll go to an analyst, an investment analyst. He'll put together a report, compile information for you. Same if you're hiring a personal trainer. So I have it take that step for me, and then I ultimately make the decision. So that makes a lot of sense. One example I'm thinking of, which is a crazy example, and I posted about this on LinkedIn as well. In the health and wellness field, I use ChatGPT a lot, and I can give you one example or two examples actually. So I have my healthcare with Maccabi here in Israel, and I have a lot of great things to say about them, but they don't tailor, I don't think, so much. I think now they're switching over to like do a lot more things in English for an English speaking audience. But as far as I know, the app and all your reports and everything is in Hebrew. So I went to get a full panel blood test and everything was in Hebrew. I could kind of make sense of it. And I just threw that baby like into ChatGPT, threw the PDF into ChatGPT. Not only did it read it for me, it told me what I was deficient in, what supplements I should take. So I went to Super Farm, right? And I'm in Super Farm and I'm like, okay, like I might be deficient in like a bunch of these vitamins. I take a picture of the back of a multivitamin. All the ingredients are in Hebrew. And I'm like, you already have my blood tests. Can you recommend one of these 5 multivitamins? Boom, 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 boom. It like analyzes all of my data that I fed her previously, which was all in Hebrew and it was hard for me to understand. It analyzes all these multivitamins that also are all in Hebrew, and it gives me a specific recommendation. And I just thought like that is such a useful and cool example and use case of ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's such an amazing example. I've seen it also in helping us navigate the system, which I'm actually very happy with. I think we also have Maccabi, and it's been great. I mean, it's the system is not perfect, but I would say that in a lot of ways, coming from the American healthcare system, it's a lot more efficient. So,
Yeah,
for example, if you see a doctor and they prescribe you something, it's literally one door over. You just pick up the medication. It's not like, let's call it in. It didn't come. It's been 2 hours. Your insurance didn't approve it yet. Like it's
yeah,
very efficient in a lot of ways. But yeah, we use it to translate things, analyze things. Even just some of the medicines are different names. So when they're like, what's the Israeli version of this
yeah,
medicine? And it'll spit it out for you. So yeah, no, that's a great use case. Now, I think what you're getting to, and I think if you look at some of the big companies out there like Apple, which is big on Apple Health, and you have your health in the watch, we're getting to a point in time where I think people are taking control of their own health. They kind
yeah,
of see themselves as I'm in control of my health and I can get data from all of these different sources, whether it's my watch or my 8 sleep bed or whatever.
yeah,
And I'm kind of using the system to gather more data. And I'm using ChatGPT to gather more data on my own kind of health. So I think that's something that's really key coming to the Israeli system as well, where
yeah,
in America too, you definitely have to kind of be your own best advocate and kind of take in the data and not take everything at face value and sometimes get second opinions. But even more so in Israel, as if you don't know the language as well, you really have to be in control of your health. Obviously, we're not in control of our health
Yeah.
God determines that, but we can do our best job at keeping our bodies healthy so we can keep moving. And so that's eating, trying to get the right connections, trying to get the right data. So do you see that kind of as a evolution, and AI is kind of attached to that, or do you feel like that's been already happening for a while now, or is that kind of new?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. I think it plays into this more general trend we're seeing that people have less and less trust in, I guess, like systems and governments and bureaucracies. And I think because of that, they want to take things into their own hands. I mean, health is a whole other episode. Literally for decades and decades, what we'll say like the FDA, for instance, in America was recommending on a health basis was just so far off from what all of the, current experts, at least that I follow and I trust, are saying now, like so far off. So I think because of that, especially on the health and wellness side, but in a bunch of other categories as well, people are a little bit fed up. And now with the access to all these LLMs like ChatGPT, you have access to information at your fingertips, even way more so than you did with Google, right? So I think because of that, people are relying less on more of like the top to bottom approach of what government officials, et cetera, are saying, and are doing their research on their own. And I think you're seeing that more in Israel as well, and I think that's going to continue growing sort of in popularity. But I'm curious, Jake, if you can walk us through maybe if there's like some other examples. I just think like what's very useful for people is seeing actual examples, and we could stay on the Aliyah note, but we could also talk about other things that we've used ChatGPT for. I know I did a post with a few, but I'm just like so curious, like what is your day and week look like with ChatGPT, right? Like, are you going in there using it every day? Are you using it weekly? What do those prompts look like? I'm just so curious to hear from someone else who's in tech, who's interested in this.
Great question. I definitely use it every day. I'm actually a user of Claude though,
Oh,
which is kind of
nice.
another leader. But honestly, I bounce back and forth between ChatGPT and Claude depending on the model that they release. Now, there is a little bit of lock-in, and you kind of alluded to it with the memory, right? So if you're uploading all of your health data and you
Yeah.
suddenly switch to another one, it might not be as good, and that's maybe one moat there. But I'm using it all the time. One of the funny use cases I have before I was making Aliyah was it was really important to us, which is it'll blow an Israeli's mind. Like they won't understand this. But in America, we're really used to having like a big washing machine and a big dryer. Now that doesn't really exist in Israel. Like you can't buy that. You get a little tiny machine, and a lot of times it doesn't have hot water, and it'll take 3 hours to run a load. It'll like be a big deal. So one of the purchases we were thinking about before was getting special 220-volt appliances, a big washer and a big dryer that we could have for a long time. So we bought these Speedqueens that you kind of see in commercial laundromats, whatever, that can take a beating from a lot of different people. And it was something that it was important to us because if you think about how much time it takes to do laundry with a family, it adds up to a lot of time every single day. And so even
Yeah.
though the machines were expensive, we bought both them. It was $3,000, I think, for both.
Wow.
We plan to have it for more than 20 years, and it saves a lot of time every single day. Okay, where am I getting with the story? So one of the issues is that Israel is not made for big appliances like this. So even though the voltage works, we wanted to make sure that we could actually get it here. So in terms of fitting through doors in our apartment, right, and doing conversions like inches to centimeters, and making sure that the apartment we could change the voltage to acquire it. So it was a whole kind of journey. But one of the funny things was the guy. I actually had to go from Ballackinwood, it's like a Philadelphia suburb, all the way to Brooklyn or maybe New Jersey, one of these places,
Oh,
to
far.
pick up the machines because I would save I think $1,000 on shipping, getting it to my house. So I put into ChatGPT at the time. I was like, hey, I have a Honda Odyssey 2016. If I take all the seats out, can I fit these two
Oh,
washer and
nice.
dryers? And he gave me the exact dimensions of them in the boxes.
Yeah.
And it said, you're going to be good just by an inch, right? And I didn't do any measuring. I probably didn't even know where my measuring tape was at the time, and because my whole house was just crazy packing things, and I drove all the way there, and it fit perfectly. Like it just
Oh my God.
fit, and so maybe that's a little bit crazy. I may have trusted it a little bit too much, but I figured the worst thing that would happen is it wouldn't fit. So
Mm.
that's an example of something that I've used it for, and these things happen every single week that you're kind of doing
Uh,
something like this. I also helped it analyzed, it helped me with the decision of whether I should keep my car and ship it to Israel or sell it and buy a new one in Israel. But it was a much more complicated analysis than that because I wanted to see if fuel efficiency wise, my 2016
uh,
Honda Odyssey would be different than 2024 Honda Odyssey or whatever.
uh-huh.
And depending on how much I would drive. So all these various factors. And I just said, like, at what point am I going to be, making money from this or
Sure.
whatever. So doing that whole analysis, feeding it 10 different inputs on different sides helped me determine that I should just bring my car that I owned. So these are some of the examples that I'm using it for. And then there's like the little stupid things like, hey, what's 18% of 20,000 or what,
Yeah.
something like that. Just little calculations.
For sure. I want to double click on something you said. I don't know if you caught it or if it was subconscious, but when you're talking about ChatGPT, you were said, you put in you put in, the calculations of what you were looking for, and he gave use the pronoun he. And the reason I'm double clicking there is because when I posted on LinkedIn, I was talking like, either the first two lines on LinkedIn are like, the hook, right, to get people to see more. So I try to either be a little funny or controversial or interesting. So it was something along the lines. I could link the post in like the community, but it was something like, ChatGPT is my new best friend. Here are like 3 practical ways that he's helping me every day. And then there was this whole argument in my comment section, like ChatGPT is female and ChatGPT has no gender, and I'm curious if I'm just curious if you even noticed that you used a pronoun. And maybe we could talk also about like the effects of like the more that I use ChatGPT, the more I feel like I'm actually speaking to a person, which is like scary. And I think there's like the whole other religious angle we could talk about this, and like the AI and everything. And it seems like nowadays the only difference, in my opinion, between a human being and like ChatGPT is that we have a neshama, that we have a soul. I mean, I'm sure there are others. We eat and like use the bathroom and all that. I don't think ChatGPT does that, but ChatGPT has logic. It could think on its own. It can like for a long time that was the hallmark of humans, right? Like we can think, analyze, make decisions, think critically, things that animals can't do, and now that was sort of removed. But did you know that you're using the specific pronoun, and what do you think about that?
So first of all, I love that you caught that. I didn't even catch it myself because honestly, I don't really talk about ChatGPT or Claude that much. I mean, we're on a podcast, so we're talking about it, but usually you are typing to it.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. I think it depends on what people set the voice to.
Uh,
There's voice mode, and you
yeah.
can choose all different types. But I mean, ultimately, end of the day, it's not human. So he, she, whatever. I guess whatever someone chooses.
I think ChatGPT is male, but Claude is female.
I don't know. They do all have their own little personalities, right? Because they all have kind of defaults for how they
Yeah.
sound, right? Like DeepSeek is I don't know why, but my impression is the default's like very different
Yeah.
than Claude. Claude, I don't know. It seems a little bit more like pretentious
Yeah.
or experience or whatever. I'm not sure, um, but that's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's a lot of angles to take it. What one other question I'm curious about? I know I'm jumping to a lot of points, and we could circle back. But when do you go to Google versus when do you go directly to like ChatGPT?
That's a great question. So I actually set my address bar search to ChatGPT search.
Wow.
I did that for a few days. And what I started to do was I started to click on the things that it was referencing.
Uh,
And I was like, broken link, broken link. Okay, one
uh-huh.
link worked. And I'm like, what is it telling me? Because when I'm actually clicking, it gives me a little summary. I
Yeah.
click on it. to go see the article and there's like nothing there.
Yeah.
So that I think brings up another good point. So basically, to answer your question, I'm still using Google for a lot of things, but my default, I'm going to Claude and asking a lot of things. Although who knows if that's even giving me the right information
Yeah.
as well. But what are some of the dangers that you're seeing with AI? I mean, I'm bringing up one
Yeah.
thing, which is I'm actually clicking on the references and it's not showing me anything.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the
Yeah.
dangers that you're seeing?
It's funny because when I think of AI, I think it like surprised all of us. And what do I mean by that? I thought the industries it was going to disrupt were like the opposite industries. What do I mean by that? I think right now the best use case for AI is with creative expression. Like I think the people that are most in danger right now at the current versions we have with AI are writers, are things like comedians, people that make like ads, like people in marketing that make ad copy for like Facebook ads, creative, all of that. I've seen ChatGPT and other AI models do that almost like at 90%, maybe 95%, like pretty amazingly well. The areas I haven't really seen it disrupt yet so far are like the less creative, more sort of like factual areas when it comes to like actual deep research, right? Where like the
Hmm.
margin of error might be a little smaller and that surprised me because I thought like the one edge we had over these like robots, was our like creative expression and our ability to be funny and humorous and to write and have personality. But I think ChatGPT does a pretty darn good job of that. And I think more of the factual stuff like deep research, analysis. I think that is where humans still, and a lot of times, have the upper hand now. Will this be different in a month from now, 2 months from that, 2 months from now, a year from now? Probably, because it's moving so quickly. But some of the dangers, I think a few things. One is what you mentioned, broken links. I've all the time seen things that were inaccurate with AI, and I think that is a huge danger to rely on that. Number two danger, I think, is people relying too heavily on it, especially with things like content creation. I can tell pretty easily when something is AI generated. Like most people don't use those long dashes, those like M dashes. Most people don't just put emojis
Damn,
everywhere
I
to
got to
put in their
stop
bullet
using
point.
them, even though I like using them.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could sort of tell it has a little bit less personality, and I think too many people are relying on that and they're not seeing any results like when they're trying to grow on socials, and it's because people are a little sick of that. And I think the last thing, which is extremely scary to me, extremely scary, is I think we're going to see it increase the loneliness epidemic. And what do I mean by that? I think for a long time, I mean, not a long time, but I think in the past 10, 15 years, especially teenagers, they have, because they've grown up in a world with social media, to them like social media, texting a friend, calling a friend, whatever it is equivalent to actually meeting up in person with someone and speaking face to face with them. But I think like all the science and research and data shows that texting someone, right, does not have nearly the same impact as actually seeing someone face to face. Now, where am I taking this a step further? I think now we have a lot of people. I've heard stories of like people have AI girlfriends, like literally teenagers have like this AI buddy or companion or lover that they're speaking to, and it feels maybe in the moment like they're fulfilling this urge or desire to connect to someone, but in the long run, it's I think really really damaging them, and like to me that is extremely scary. Like there's a time and a place for AI. AI certainly cannot replace any real friendships. Even though I speak to AI like a friend, I'm not like canceling plans like to hang out with ChatGPT. I'm using it for a specific purpose. I'm going in, extracting information, utilizing it like a tool, and not just utilizing it like, a companion. I don't know. That's my take, but I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also of the mindset of using it like a tool. The same way I think of my mind. I used to think that every single thought that's in my head, like that's coming from me. And that I took me some time and through practicing metacognition, realized that no, the mind is like a tool that you can pick up and put down. And sometimes you don't need to be analyzing something. And
Mhm.
so same exact way I'm using AI. And it's interesting when I think about what I use it for. I feel like I could do everything myself that I'm using AI for, but it would take me longer. Meaning,
Uh-huh.
I'm not actually doing something that I couldn't do with AI. And I think time will tell with people who are using it for things that they couldn't do necessarily, right? So if you can't write an article or whatever and research an article, and you're using for it, you're using AI to do that. Like what is that going to look like long term? Like, do
Yeah.
your other skills fatigue? I think we'll see just like with cell phone usage. If you're using a cell phone all the time, does that affect your brain cells? Right,
Yeah.
like all these things. So I think that's a danger that I'm seeing is will skills fatigue over time in kind of
Yeah.
relying on AI for everything.
100%. Quick question I have for you. Do you have any projects that you have set up within ChatGPT and Claude? And I could sort of, for anyone listening that might not be understanding what we're talking about here, projects are a way where within ChatGPT or Claude, you could feed it specific information. So every time you go to have a chat with it, it already has that information. So like I have one, for instance, for all of my health data, right, where I feed in my blood tests, I feed in my workout plan, I feed in the supplements that I take. And when I ask it a question, it already knows, okay, these are Alec's test results. This is Alec's workout plan. This is his, whatever. And I have that for like work, and I have that for the JLM Scoop, which is my local newsletter. It has the information there. I'm curious if you have these projects set up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to give people some context on what projects are, if I understand it correctly, it's basically a folder where you're going to put all of this stuff related to one topic or one thing that you're working on, and the algorithm will look to that chat, the instructions that you give for that project, so the goal of that project and what you've already messaged to it and uploaded to it. So you're basically, instead of firing off a new chat and starting it new and having it look through all of your chat history, you're basically saying like, hey, here's the needle in the haystack and just work in this area. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm opening it now. I have one for breaking bagels.
Nice.
So that kind of makes sense, right? Because we're doing transcriptions for the podcast with AI. So that's really interesting. And then I have just a bunch of other projects that I'm working on for my own, not Good Vibes, the design studio,
Uh-huh.
but the other business that I co-founded that is called Nora Health. It's a behavioral addiction therapist that we're building. First, helping people with pornography usage, and then moving on to gambling and eating disorders and that sort of thing. And so I have a project that is all around developing the context prompt for the first version of our AI. So that just sounded like a whole bunch of like whatever, but basically there's an AI component in the app that we're building, and so I have a project that is helping me refine the AI component in that app.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about yourself? What projects do you have in your folders?
Yeah. Let's see. I'll pull it up real quick. I also have Claude, by the way, but I use it much less than ChatGPT. I might cancel my Claude subscription. I find like Claude really had the upper hand on writing before ChatGPT released some of their newer models like GPT 4.5 and 4.0. Now I think ChatGPT does just as good of a job. The projects I have are for JLM Scoop, which is my local newsletter. All my work at Beehive with the partner program as like partnerships manager. I have another one. Oh, this is an interesting use case. So I have my health and fitness one that I mentioned, but then I also have personal finance plus investing. This is one of the things that I mentioned in my LinkedIn post. The files that I have in here, I have basically all of my holdings in my Chase account, right? That like I invest S&P 500, all that kind of stuff. I have basically like a plan that I built for myself of like how I'm going to be investing. I have like just a list of all the assets I accumulated, and I could literally go in and I could tell it like, give me a breakdown of my holdings, or like how should my holdings change right now with like Trump's tariff policy. And I could ask it questions that like otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get access to. And to me, like that's a really cool use case as well.
Yeah, no, I love that use case. I'm actually working with a company that's doing something similar to that. It's called Prosperity, and you can connect your accounts via Plaid and
Yeah.
then chat with the AI. So uh, that way it's, you're actually getting live data for all
Yeah.
the questions, and it's actually giving insights. I
Huh.
kind of think, well, I've worked with them since the beginning, and one of the way I think about it is you always have that kind of nerdy friend who like loves credit card points and loves like is telling you important dates not to miss for your Roth 401k or
Yeah.
whatever, like all these things. And like they're right, like they really geek out about it, and they can make a lot more money over time if they're investing. And so that's kind of what I think about in terms of that startup. But I love the use cases you put together, and it's like something that you could imagine in 5-10 years from now, you could still have ChatGPT and you're chatting with it like a
Yeah.
personal finance coach, and you pay $20 a month for it, which is just mind blowing.
Exactly. I'm going to ask you a question. It's a little bit putting you on the spot here, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, and a little maybe it requires a little vulnerability. I'm assuming that ChatGPT helps you a lot with your design agency, right? Everyone who doesn't know, Jake has his own design agency. I'm curious if you feel, I guess the right word is threatened at all. But I have no design background really, and like I have ChatGPT. I'm not like anything professional, but like I have ChatGPT throw some stuff with like for me together. Like Lovable made me a really nice website recently. So like there are a lot of these no code builders and tools. I'm curious if you feel threatened at all. And again, this is putting you on the spot a little bit, or if you view it as more of a tool that you can utilize.
I love this question. Great question. I will answer it, but I'll ask you one question first that's
Sure.
related to it, and it's a rapid fire.
Yeah.
Uh, so if there's like something that you know really well in your field, like you know a lot about marketing, probably a lot of
Yeah.
different aspects of it, and you put it in ChatGPT, does it understand it to the extent that you understand it?
No, I would say probably newsletters. I'd probably say I'm becoming more of a newsletter expert with all my work at Beehive, JLM Scoop. No, for sure it doesn't understand it to the same level that I do. But it might. It might in the next, 3 to 6 months slash year. Who knows with the rate that it's growing at.
Yeah, for sure. So I find it the same thing, like really good design work. And I'm looking to a lot of designers who are much more talented than me and have been doing this for a long time. Like really good design work and really good product work and really good marketing work is really hard. Now, the easy things will just, AI can do it, right? Like make a YouTube thumbnail or, make a social media, post for us. So
Yeah, it's
that's
a good
sort of
idea,
like,
by the way. YouTube thumbnail for us. It's we should have ChatGPT make some stuff.
so I'm not a ChatGPT subscriber, so I can't do it.
Ah,
You're gonna
I can
have to
do
do
it.
that for us. That's a whole other battle we have. Like I use Claude more, use ChatGPT more. I'm sure if we ask people who are listening to this, more of them use ChatGPT because I
Probably.
think it has more market share. But for people who've used both, tell us which ones you like better. But yeah, I think at the low end of the design work, people will just do that themselves. I'm not so worried about kind of the more complex stuff yet. I did spend a month with Lovable and only built stuff in Lovable for a whole entire month, and I
Wow.
realized like it's really good at getting 90% of the way there
Yeah.
for very standard looking things like B2B SaaS, like, hey, I need to take in a bunch of data and I need to format it and I need to send it off and alert someone. But the really complicated stuff, I don't think it can do yet. And I think ultimately, like as a designer, my goal is to understand the people I'm designing for and the business. So the core of good product is design, and the core of good design is research. And the
Yeah.
core of research is actually working with people. So that's the only thing I'm doing is I'm trying to understand people, what their needs are, and then how we deliver that value. So I don't think it can replace that yet. I've done a lot of in-person research from construction sites, walking around and talking to
Yeah.
foremen and taking pictures, whatever. And ChatGPT and the other AI tools are not at that point yet. So we'll see. Like I think that it's not going to replace designers, but a designer who's using ChatGPT is going to replace someone else who's not using it. And I
Got
think
it.
that's the call to action is just don't be afraid of AI. Use it as much as you can. So to give you an example, I just paid $288 for a Midjourney yearly subscription. And I can now use the tool for an entire year, learn it, and do as much as I want with it. And that's a way that I'm going to add more offerings than I could previously.
For sure.
So I'm not trained classically as a graphic designer. I didn't go to school for it. I trained as a product designer. Now, someone outside of the field might be like, what are the differences between these things? But there's a lot of nuance, just like I'm looking at you, there's kind of the marketing sphere, but email is like a
Yeah.
big part of that. And then even within email, there's probably people that do very specialized things. So what
Sure.
I'm trying to do is just double down on what I'm really good at, and then use all the other AI tools to add more value to the stack. So
I
I
love
can
that.
deliver things faster, better, add more offerings to it. And I think ultimately, in the end of the day, people just need to focus on what they're really good at and keep doing that. And don't be afraid of AI. People
I
still
love
like
that.
buying from other people. People still want to
Sure.
work with other people. Look, I used, like I said, used Lovable for a month. Ultimately, in the end of the day, I hired a developer and worked directly with him. And it's been a way more valuable, amazing process than trying to vibe code it myself.
For sure, for sure. I think we need a whole other episode on like specific tools outside of ChatGPT, like a vibe coding, vibe marketing tools, because obviously that's hot right now. I would love to do another episode all on AI automations using Make.com, Zapier. I know you set up a really cool automation for this podcast. Um, but maybe to close out the podcast, one thing I think cool to think about, and this is a question I have for you, is AI bringing us closer to Mashiach? Translation for that. I'm more curious about maybe what we as Jews, right, and as Orthodox observant Jews can sort of take away from AI and say, how does this connect to our Judaism? How does this connect to the bigger picture of what's going on here? It's the million
It's a
dollar
good question.
question.
It is, man.
Yeah.
I think it signals that we're in the time of Mashiach for sure. I was kind of seeing this before deciding to move to Israel, but it felt like, hey, this is the time of Mashiach. I want to be in Israel for this.
Yeah.
And I think if you think about the Messianic era, ideally people will have to, do less of the things that they don't want to do and do more of the
Yeah.
things that they do want to do. And I think you can see AI can get to that point where it can
Oh,
do a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to do, and do more of the things that you are uniquely suited to do, focusing on your gifts, focusing on what brings you joy, spending time with your family, all those things. So I think in the short answer is yeah, it's a symptom of the Messianic era. But I want to turn it over to you to close it out and answer your own question.
yeah. Yeah. Sure. I think for me, what is really sort of strong and like the strong argument there. And I remember someone said this about, like transplants, like what makes someone like an own human being, their own person, right? It's not your arm, right? Because people could, God forbid, lose an arm and get an arm, get a prosthetic arm. It's not even your heart, right? It's not your heart. It's not your brain. You can get a heart transplant, right? They're even like now doing studies where you can get a brain transplant. I'm not sure if they've actually completed the first one, but your heart, your brain, your arm, your leg, that's not what makes you you. And for someone that is, an Orthodox Jew that believes in the Torah, like we believe that each person, right? You could see it in the beginning of the Torah, Nishmas Adam, where God gave Adam a soul, right, and breathed life into his soul. And I think really what makes someone, their own person is not your arm, it's not your leg, it's not your brain, it's your soul. And I think this connects very clearly to what's going on now with AI, because everything is at your fingertips, right? Like knowledge is all at your fingertips. Not only knowledge is at your fingertips like it was with Google, but the ability to do deep analysis and do things that require a lot of skills and previously required a lot of training and money are now at your fingertips. And I think this goes back to what's the difference between ChatGPT and humans? Right now, like there's not such a crazy difference, right? And like, Elon Musk is building his Neuralink and everything and already had the first few transplants, and we're getting closer to like a robotic type of age. And I think the real differentiator at the end of the day will only be each person's soul that was given to them by God, and only by God and through God. And I think that is sort of signaling that we're getting to this Messianic era, which hopefully should come speedily in our days.
Amen. I love that. I agree. And consciousness comes from a higher place than knowledge and logic and all these things. So I think we should definitely take to heart that there's no extra person in the world. You're not an extra person, and everyone is a unique expression of their consciousness. So I think that's the call to action, which is go out and do what you are uniquely suited to do.
I love it. This was a lot of fun, great episode, and I think it's a perfect way to close.
All right. Thanks, Alec. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, what's up, man? I gotta run and get my kids now, but I will have a little bit of time when I get back, so I will shoot you a text and hopefully.